Welcome into the Rebound Rundown. Today is Tuesday, December 3rd, 2024. I'm your host, Paul Fritchner, and this is your daily digest college basketball show covering the local Cincinnati area teams every Monday through Friday. I do want to give a shout out because today, for the first time, the interview that I'm about to do, at least, is going to be live on the Rebound Rundown's YouTube page. So if you want to go check it out, I have Rick Broering, the publisher of Musketeer Report, and the radio analyst for NKU, who generally joins me on the Tuesday morning show here on the Rebound Rundown, as he has for the last couple of years. You can go and watch that interview on the Rebound Rundown's YouTube channel. I'm going to start posting more content on YouTube just to give you a little visual aid there with what I've been doing here from an audio perspective over the last few seasons on the show, but thought it'd be good to start incorporating YouTube as well. So make sure you like, subscribe, all of that to the Rebound Rundown YouTube channel. But Rick, it's great to see you. You are currently in a hotel room, I'm assuming up in Akron, as the Norse get ready to take on Akron on Tuesday night, tonight, really, as people are listening to this. How are you? It's great to see you. It's been a little while on the Rebound Rundown.
Yeah, happy to be back. My mic is working, and hopefully everything's coming through and clear and sounding well here. But yeah, up in Akron and ready to talk some NKU and Xavier with you.
Let's start with Xavier and get your quick thoughts on where Xavier sits right now at 7-1 on the season, but debuting at 103 in the net rankings on Monday morning. The first net rankings of the season came out. I'll go through all of the other local teams here as we get into deeper parts of the Rebound Rundown once I kind of break down the games and do everything for the rest of the show. But Xavier, at least as we talk about them, is 103 in the net. There's two sides of the coin here, Rick. The one side is you don't need to worry about the net. You just need to win the games in front of you. The flip side of the coin is it does reflect the fact that Xavier purposely scheduled their bye games against some of the worst teams in the country and didn't beat them as badly as they needed to in order to really game the system and be ranked higher in the net. What's your overall takeaway from the 7-1 start for Xavier?
Yeah, I mean, the metrics, the KenPom numbers, now the net numbers are indicative of the type of team they've been to this point. The good news for Xavier fans is they haven't completely blown up their season by taking a bad loss yet, and they've been able to battle through, like the game against South Carolina State at the Cintas Center the other night, fight through and get the 3-point win, which was very important, because otherwise you're in a situation like you were last year where your season, your at-large hopes are mostly shot before you even get into the month of December. So yes, they're not playing all that well. Yes, those metrics are indicative of the type of team they've been to this point. But at the same time, the ultimate measure of your resume is the win-loss record. And as long as they keep that on the right side of things, their other metrics will come and meet the win-loss record at some point, and they'll be just fine. So they just need to continue to string together wins. Now, that's not going to happen if they don't make some improvements here.
No bad losses on the resume, just the one loss to Michigan, which is a quad one loss as it sits right now. I guess we can start talking about the quads and all that. I really don't want to get bogged down in all of that and get too overwhelmed by that in December, but at least it is something to look at, that as long as Xavier doesn't lose to Morgan State next Tuesday night, they won't have that typical, as you would say, bad loss on your resume. Xavier has avoided that here in the non-conference. They've skated through a couple of these games, but they at least have only the one good loss, as you would say, now here at 7-1. Let's talk about the Norse now, though, Rick. Norse have struggled at different points this year. They've also played a pretty tough schedule. They pick up their first D1 win of the season the other day, second win overall, but first D1 win against Bellarmine at home. Let's talk about the Norse from a macro perspective, and then we'll get into kind of the particulars.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at NKU, there's definitely some hand-wringing when they get off to that 1-5 start. But one thing that I was throwing out there was the reality of the situation was the best you'd probably expect them to be was 2-4 at that point after their first 6 games. They had that buzzer-beating loss to Nichols at home, a team that they fell behind against by 19 points in the first half, battled their way back, had a lead in the second half, and then let it slip away and lost it on a buzzer beater. That obviously wasn't a good performance. You'd like to have that one back. They didn't play very well in that game. But aside from that, the record doesn't really tell you much about what they've been to this point. They've had some pretty good moments, like 30 minutes of that game against Cincinnati, and then they've had some not so good moments, like we talked about with Nichols. So I think the bigger question was, how are they going to respond when they got into some of these games like Charleston, Bellarmine, Akron, which is coming up, and then IU Indy next, which is their first Horizon League game. And the Charleston game, again, they got off to a really bad start, played better as the game went on, still ended up losing by 15 on the road. But then finally, when they got back home, they had their first performance of the season where it felt like they've really put together a full 40 minutes in that 86-70 win over Bellarmine. I think that's one to build off of. And the fact that you've got Trey Robinson and Sam Vincent both playing well now for multiple games together at the same time, I think that's something to build off of for this team.
How has Sam Vincent looked coming off that injury?
Well, the last 4 games, he's just gotten better and better. It feels like each game he's taking his game to new heights and taking over more and more on the offensive end. He had 18 points in the game the other day this weekend against Bellarmine, and was 6 of 11 from the field, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, a couple of steals, just filling out the box score, doing what Sam Vincent does. He's playing a ton of minutes too. He played 38 minutes in that game, so he's showing no lingering effects from that ACL injury that he suffered last season at St. Mary's and the subsequent surgery that he had. Now, the question is, can NKU get a third scorer going with those two guys on a consistent basis? Because he and Trey Robinson have been very good, but you'd like to have a third guy, whether that be an LJ Wells or Kian Atijre in the post, or whether it be another perimeter guy like a Randall Pettis or Josh Dilling, who have both had some standout moments, but nothing sustained to this point.
NKU started 162 on KenPom. They're down to 200 right now. Do you think that's indicative of the way that NKU has played? Do you think they're a better team than that? Do you think this team has things to figure out? Where's your mindset here going into this Akron game?
Yeah, I think when you look at what they did against like Florida State and Cincinnati, especially, they probably played to expectations. Same thing against Bellarmine. But then you have some games like Nichols and Charleston where they did not play to expectation in terms of the score, and that's dragging down their predictive metrics. So it's fair to say that those metrics are indicative of how they've played to this point. Now, again, like I've talked about, I think the defense always gets better as the season goes on. That's just the nature of that matchup zone that they play. The more chemistry, the more comfortable they are playing together, that defense always gets better as the season continues. The offensive end is where there are probably more questions and more upside for this team. Like I said, if they can get a couple of these guys going who certainly have potential, and that didn't even get into a guy like Dan Goresger, who started playing a little bit better in the second half of this Bellarmine game as well. If they get 1, 2, or even more of those guys going on the offensive end to go along with some of the starters, then they could really be working with a championship level team in the Horizon League potentially.
So generally, I would be the one that previews NKU and Akron here going into tonight's game. But since we have you here, this is NKU's last Tuesday night game of the season. And that's not to say we can't have you on another night of the week. But for these Monday morning or Monday night shows into Tuesday morning here to have you on, let's get your thoughts. Let's get your preview of NKU and Akron. This tips off in Akron on ESPN Plus at 7:00 tonight up at Rhodes Arena.
Yeah, well, what an opportunity for NKU. Akron ranked 133 in KenPom. They've been very competitive in the MAC, and they're a team that's talented offensively. They can really shoot the ball from the outside. In fact, one of their best players is actually a local product, Nate Johnson from Lakota East High School. He's shooting over 47% from three-point range on the season. They're the type of team that takes about half of their shot attempts from beyond the arc. So it's going to be bombs away. They're going to try to extend that NKU matchup zone. It'll be interesting to see how NKU adjusts and matches up with them defensively, but that really is going to be the story of the game to me. How NKU defends all those perimeter shots from this Akron team, and then how NKU rebounds on the defensive end and eliminates those second chance points.
All right, Rick, I appreciate you taking a few minutes today to talk about Xavier and NKU. We'll have to get you on next week. A huge week next week with the Crosstown Shootout looming. So we'll for sure have you on throughout the week for coverage of that game. But appreciate it. Best of luck to the Norse tonight up there in Akron. And thanks for joining the show.
Thanks for having me on, Paul.